after I left office, and it felt like the time to have a conversation about whether or not all the footage that Clark had the foresight to film, whether it might be worth sharing some of that with the world. And I really, of course, I credit all the incredible people involved with this film, but it genuinely would not have existed had Clark not persisted with picking up a camera and capturing moments, despite all odds, those odds being my total reluctance. And so the why now? Because I think it's important to humanise leadership. And when I say humanise leadership, I don't just mean show that there are normal people in politics. I mean show that values that normal people value have a place in politics as well. Things like kindness and empathy. And I think now's the time for that as well.
So absolutely. And when Clark was originally filming these behind the scenes moments, what was the intention behind him filming?
Well, I mean, most days he was just trying not to die at my hands over the fact that I was so reluctant. You know, initially I think he saw me recording the oral history. New Zealand has this long-standing practice of archivists at the Turnbull Library who would ask politicians, and they might be at different levels, either the leader of the opposition or Prime Minister. In my case, when I ran in a by-election, they contacted me and said, will you take part in these interviews? And I was saying, what would the purpose of that be? And they said, well, you can use it for whatever you want. And you decide when they can be released. And the forms literally gave me the option of saying, no one can access these until I die. And I thought, well, that seems safe. And so I started undertaking these recordings, and I think that probably triggered something for Clark, where he thought, well, what about the visual side? So he just picked up a camera and started recording. And I think you can see from the intimacy of the footage that we didn't have in mind that we would share it with, 300 of our closest friends. But I'm glad we did.
Well, yes, with that in mind, when you walk into this room and everybody's seen into those moments, how does it feel to have shared that intimacy with so many people?
Well, there's probably a reason why I've only seen the final version the one time. It's very realistic. It's very much what it was like. And that's something special and hard to do, and the filmmakers did that, so, incredible. But it didn't feel like a huge leap to me. I love New Zealand. I love that part of our expectation is that we know our leaders and our politicians. So it didn't feel like that much of a leap to open the door to a home and say, hi, Mai, come on in, because I felt like they were already there.
I think that's really lovely. I can see that culturally, how that would form part of filming and then sharing it. And Lindsay, what about you with this project? What time did you guys meet each other, and were you just given reams and reams of footage that Clark had filmed?
Yeah, so hello everybody. Thank you for coming out to the cinema to watch this documentary. It is, I think, really important to watch this in the theater with other people. There's, a communal thing that happens when we gather and share something like this. So this film was 7 years in the making, and an extraordinary group of filmmakers came together to make it. 2 countries and 2 time zones. And I do have to take a moment to shout out a few people that are here tonight. Of course, Clark, and he's back there. Thank you, Clark. Yes, there it is. Thank you for having the instinct to pick up the camera, because you knew something extraordinary was unfolding. That is a documentarian's dream come true. And we have our producer from New Zealand, Cass Avery, who's here, who carried the film for quite some time. Gigi Pritzker, our producer from America. Our editor, Grace Sada, is here. I don't know where she is. There she is. Our composer, Sophie Ellis-Bextor. And I think forgotten everybody. But I did want to point out this entire team because it takes a lot of people to get a film like this over the finish line. And so I came on board after Jacinda had resigned and moved to the United States, and the film was financed in America, and that's when the two teams came together, a team in America and a team in New Zealand, and we felt that this was a tremendous leadership that deserved a historical document, something that we could pass on to our children as a record of, I think, an extraordinary leader. So it was a great joy for me to come on board. I had admired Jacinda from afar for many years, first when she passed the gun legislation, and then during COVID when I was desperate for science-backed information here, and they would run your COVID briefings on CNN and MSNBC, and we always had the TV on when you would appear. And then, of course, when she resigned, I remember having a kind of visceral reaction to that because I didn't want to see her go. So when I got a phone call that there was material that had been shot behind the scenes, that was obviously for me an extraordinary opportunity to start to shape something that we could leave for our children and our children's children.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, one of the things I was fascinated by was seeing you know, being leader of New Zealand, but whilst also becoming a first-time mother and bringing your baby, and how you compartmentalize your home life and your work life. And have you thought a little bit about how it might be when Neve watches this when she's older and what she might take away from this film?
You know, I think I just might be like every other parent where part of you thinks, well, I hope kind of the memory is somewhat limited, and then I get the opportunity just to frame things around happy, you know, albums and other forms of, you know, memory building. But this film, you know, I love the idea that she has something that is a capsule of sorts. But I love that not just for her, but for New Zealanders. This is a really New Zealand story, and I know for many people you'll watch it and there'll be moments you'll see and it'll trigger a memory from your time through COVID or where you were when you heard about March 15. But for New Zealanders, that's very visceral. So I think about her in the same way I think about every New Zealander. I hope they feel connected to it.
Do you think that when you're driven by the desire to show the humanity behind these roles, is this a film that could come out whilst you're still in office, or was it necessary that you'd actually left that role before it's shared with everybody?
I think I would have felt uncomfortable about that for the sole reason that for me, the singular focus had to be doing the job. I feel so strongly that politics is an act of public service that if it ever looked like you were doing anything that might have assumed to be self-serving, I would never have felt okay about that.
Yeah, I can understand that because it might seem very hard to cut that line between sharing people with your story, but also, as you say, not seeming like you're distracting them from having their interest first when that's what you're
Exactly, but at the same time, I don't think anyone will be under the illusion it's a puff piece. I mean, I would have done my hair and makeup, wouldn't I?
Well, how does it feel to relive some of the difficult things you had to lead your country through, like the Christchurch shootings and COVID?
Yeah.
When I first watched it all the way through was at Sundance with everyone else. And when the credits rolled and I had to come on stage with Lindsay, I was crying. And I remember saying, it's like the equivalent of laughing at your own jokes, you know, when you cry at your own film. But I think it's because it's not that everything sits on the surface and I somehow haven't processed everything. It's actually that I never will, because some things are meant to stay with you. And I think the film shows why.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lindsay, what do you hope people take away from this film?
Yeah, I think Jacinda was an incredible participant and subject. She let us do our work. She trusted us to shepherd this story and shape it and bring it into the world. And I think because you are a lover of history, you understood that this was an important thing to share. And so I'm really grateful that she did share that with us, even though some of it I know is hard for you to watch. But for the rest of us, it really humanizes the experience of leading and puts you in the moment with her under pressure. What do I hope people take away? I mean, we're living in pretty dark times. I think people are exasperated with the leadership that we're seeing all over the world that's based on fear and division. And I know I can speak for myself in saying that I'm not satisfied with that. I would like to see another way forward. And for me, it's like the late great Roger Ebert said about movies, they're empathy machines, right? And for me, the reason I became a filmmaker is because I believe it's important to feel empathy and to share empathy and to understand the humanity in other people. So I think the act of making this film, I think it is just to service that goal. And in order to build a better future, we have to see another way forward. And for me and for my co-director, Michelle Walsh, who I know would love to be here tonight, it was important to us to give that to an audience, to give the gift of another way forward. And hopefully it serves as inspiration.
Oh, very much so. And I think the film ends on such an optimistic note. And now that you've been seeing the documentary shared in different countries, I know it's already been in America and Australia and New Zealand, so you've got lots of reactions to it now. And how heartening has it been that your desire to prioritize empathy in leadership, that's actually what people are taking away from it, Jacinda? Can you see that?
Yeah, I can. But I will always be an evidence-based politician, and so alongside sharing this strong intuition that I have that people do want to see empathy in leadership. My time here in the UK, I've been really lucky to spend some time at Oxford, and I'm now working on a project to try and prove that it's not just a values-based way to lead, it's a successful way to lead, and that people are seeking more of it than we believe. Because obviously when democracies elect what we call strongman leadership, we can unfortunately interpret that to mean that's what people are looking for, when it's so much more complex than that, and where we're not often enough offering them an alternative. So maybe I'm on a bit of a mission to prove that I'm not the only one who believes in leading in this way.
No, I think that's very, very true, and I think it's a real beacon. But if you're in a role such as Prime Minister, how encouraged are you to let that be part of how you lead? Is it something that needs to culturally change in the political landscape when people take on these roles, that they are able to share that side of themselves?
I think voters need to change their expectation of what it is to be a political leader. I think we have perhaps in different walks of life, but not necessarily in politics. And I think at the same time, politicians need to trust that the things that brought them into politics, public service, are the things people want you to showcase, and hold on to that even in the really tough times.
Do you ever miss it? Do you miss being Prime Minister?
There's lots of things I miss about it. I miss the people I worked with and the people I worked for. But I don't regret the decision.
No, I can see that it's... Well, you talked about imposter syndrome. Can we talk a little bit about that? Because where do you think that came from, and did that stay with you for the whole duration of your time?
It could have come from a multitude of places. I think almost... I mean, gosh, I don't want to make a big assumption, but I think New Zealanders get a little bit of it just by being born in New Zealand, because some of it's humility. Some of that's cultural. A big chunk of it probably comes with being a woman. But to be honest, I can't say. All I know is I don't think you get rid of it. I think instead, actually, the trick is to harness the strength that comes with it, and there's plenty of strengths that come with it.
What would you say to people who watch the film, like I did, thinking, how on earth did you manage to do all this and have your new baby alongside and take on the role of being a mother whilst also in this unexpected role of Prime Minister? I mean, when you look back on that, what are your memories of that time?
Sometimes life is just logistics.
Big time logistics.
Big time, and we just had logistics on steroids. But Park used to have the saying, when I really think about it, it's a little grotesque, but it was, there's only one way to eat an elephant. And it's true, it's just, one step at a time, you take every day as it comes. I don't know if I want to take the saying any further, one bite at a time, but that literally was it, whether it was a crisis, that seemed insurmountable, with just take each decision as it comes. And you'll be surprised what you're capable of doing if you just don't allow yourself to be overwhelmed and take each moment.
That sounds like good advice for life, no matter what's going on. Lindsay, would you like other world leaders to approach you about making some of that?
I don't know. I'm very picky about what I choose to work on, and Jacinda is a great character and a great human being, and somebody whose story I felt resonated with people beyond politics, right? Our goal when we made this film was to make a film that transcended politics, that was about motherhood, that was about balancing work and life, that was about being human, what it's like to navigate, difficult relationships and situations. So we really wanted audiences to connect with this film beyond politics. I always say that politics is a great stage. It's a great theater. And many interesting things unfold on the stage of politics.
Why America is the biggest stage in town.
In America, it has quite an interesting stage right now, but I think for me, this film became much bigger than politics, and as we've taken it around and shared it with audiences, the reaction is really, really emotional. It really resonates with people on a deep, deep level, I think, especially with women. Speaking of imposter syndrome, I remember one of the first lunches we had together. I had such intense imposter syndrome sitting across from you. Do you remember that? I told you I did. I was very aware of my own imposter syndrome. So it was so important for us to bring those ideas into the film because we don't talk about it enough. I think men experience it, but I think women experience it even more. That feeling of self-doubt, that feeling of, I can't do this. I've never done it before. And I think what's extraordinary about her story is that she wasn't looking for power. It sort of happened the way it happened when Andrew Little stepped down, and you were kind of a reluctant prime minister, but you showed the world something, something really important in your leadership. And just like Shackleton said, and say at the end of the movie, that you set out to do one thing and then you end up doing something else. And I think that's an incredibly powerful idea. And my hope is that young women, young men, anybody that might be thinking about going into politics or leadership, doesn't let that self-doubt get in the way, that they take that step forward and lead with.
Would like to include that you haven't?
Well, our first cut of the film was 17 hours long. So maybe there's like a TV series or something. No, there was so much good material, and part of the challenge with these films is how do you distill it down to just exactly the right ingredients, and that's something that takes time. You might have 3 things that are all excellent, but if they're doing the same narrative work, You gotta choose one. And that's always tough. But, you know, you whittle it down.
I have two things.
Okay.
I swear in the movie. I don't know if you noticed that I drop a little F-bomb.
You're really upset by it.
I know I raised it a lot. And it's not that I don't swear. I swear like a sailor, but I just didn't expect my mother Laurel to have to see me do it. The second thing is, and you can't do this, I think, in a piece like this, but you might have seen the end roll of the credits it says, and we'd like to thank the public servants of Aotearoa New Zealand for all that you do. You don't run a country, and she saw it. Oh, but I really, really like the name Nene now. I mean, it just suits her. It's really, she enjoyed it, and she laughed along. Yeah, my mother's wonderful.
Yeah, and I guess for her as well, it must be quite hard to see all the things you were dealing with and you having to watch it, you know, through the screen. And
I think my father struggled with it the most.
Oh, really?
He didn't read a newspaper or watch the news for 5 years.
Really?
Yeah. He'd wait for his twin brother to send him a select curated piece of what it was safe to consume because it upset him too much. But man, now he's all in. I can send articles every other day.
I'm at his shoulders if
I would maybe describe the ending as a little bittersweet. I mean, there's optimism, of course, but you know, we also try to acknowledge that it is difficult to be optimistic sometimes, especially when we're facing all the challenges that we're facing. And so we wanted to acknowledge that difficulty as well, because I actually think the argument for optimism is a powerful one. The alternative is what? To stay where we are, to not move forward. And I think this idea that is conjured in the Shackleton story of the power of imagination and the power of moving forward in the direction that you want to move, and to be able to kind of dig deep within yourself on a daily basis is a way to kind of keep yourself sane in sort of insane times. So I think it's kind of it's a cautious optimism in a way. So.
And what about you, Jacinda? How do you preserve that cautious optimism for yourself?
I know it always seems a little bit grim when you compare the times you're in to the time that an Antarctic explorer was stranded on the ice for 2 years, not knowing whether he'd be rescued, desperately trying to save the lives of 20 plus members of the crew. But it can feel like that sometimes. And that's why I really love the team, and Lindsay in particular drove the idea of including that narrative from Shackleton, and that quote that I loved so much that I had it printed on mugs and I would give them to people. I mean, at the White House they give you little embossed M&Ms with the White House crest. I know, I left the White House with my pocket shaking with M&Ms. But I would give people a mug with a picture of Shackleton and optimism is true moral courage on the side of it.
I know you have to be impartial, but I'd say it's a bit classier.
It's nothing like a souvenir mug. But because I think I rebelled against the idea of, and as the film captions, optimism is naivety, when someone like Shackleton, who in the hardest of times used it as a tool of leadership, it was a choice, and as you said, a courageous one. So it's needed most in the darkest of times because it's a way to help people get through the epitome of hope. And so I like that it ends on that because I think that's what we need more of, those courageous acts.
Hear, hear. And cheers for that. Thank you guys so much. My final question is to you, Lindsay. I've heard Jacinda call this documentary a doco throughout, which I absolutely love. I just wondered if that's a term you've adopted yet.
Not yet. I love
Is that not a thing?
I had never heard it until
Kiwis?
Yeah, I think it's quite a Kiwi thing, which I like.
we just say ducks in America.
Ducks.
Ducks. Just ducks.
Oh, dogs.
Dogs. I'm from Chicago, so it's a little.
Doco documentary. We've all really loved it. Thank you so much. Thank you.